Tradelord Greasus Tribestealer Gatecrasher Hordemaster Goldtooth, the shockingly obese, is the single most powerful ogre to ever live in the Warhammer universe, and was the final Overtyrant before the end times. He is the subject of today's video. While there isn't an overwhelming amount of lore about Tradelord Greasus Tribestealer Gatecrasher Hordemaster Goldtooth, the shockingly obese, all of the lore we do know about him is incredibly interesting and honestly worth hearing. So I hope you guys will all stay here and hear the whole video, because, I want you to do that, obviously. Anyway, this is also my first ever Warhammer lore video, so if you could show some extra support and love, I would really appreciate it. I really want to get into more lore when it comes to Warhammer, and I think that Tradelord Greasus Tribestealer Gatecrasher Hordemaster Goldtooth, the shockingly obese, is a great place to start. Especially since he's the character who's caught my eye the most when learning about the Warhammer universe. There's just something about incredibly obese track runners I love learning about. Also, for the rest of this video, I'm just going to refer to him as Greasus Goldtooth. The bit of saying his full name every single time I mention him was funny for this intro segment, but I'm not trying to do that for the rest of the video, because that's going to make this video like 50 minutes long if I do. Before getting into the legendary tale of Greasus himself, we need to briefly touch on the Ogre Kingdom, the, in my opinion, coolest faction in the game Warhammer III. This isn't about the game though, so let's just get into the lore, baby. Ogres are massive humanoid creatures, hitting heights up to 9 feet on average. Jeez, man, why aren't they in the NBA? What are they doing eating people for? Get in the NBA, bro. LeBron needs you, man. Lakers need a center. They also can weigh around 1,000 pounds, which is pretty insane. When it comes to going person for person, the ogres might just be the most powerful race in the Warhammer universe, or, well, at least very close to it. Due to this insane power every single individual ogre holds, they often find themselves as wandering mercenaries, or wandering big blokes who just kill and eat everything you see. Sometimes they're a bit more aggressive, they're not known to be very nice. The ogres consider their homeland the Mountains of Morn, where they are by far the most numerous, even though they do spread out across the world in their nomadic and mercenary lifestyle. While the area around the Mountains of Morn are considered the Ogre Kingdom, there really isn't much of a kingdom there. When I think of the word kingdom, I think of massive castles, lords and their armies, and like a social caste with like peasants, nobles, and all that crap. But there really isn't any of that in the Ogre Kingdoms. There's a social caste, but it's not really like that, like peasant kind of, you know what I mean, right? It's about how much you can fucking eat. Let's be real here. It's how fat you are. Anyway, the thing is, there really are a ton of permanent buildings in the Ogre Kingdom, since the ogres are nomadic and migrate around the Mountains of Morn area constantly, usually not staying in the same place for too long. However, some of the major tribes do stay in the same area, so that is important to know. Like, the major tribes are like stationary, but there's a lot of nomadic ogres traveling around is what I'm trying to get at. But even those tribes aren't really kingdoms how you would traditionally think of them. Ogres aren't really generally unified. And while we'll get into how Greasus changed that in a bit, ogres generally operate in smaller groups with tons of different tribes exerting influence over different areas. There really isn't one leader, and the ogre tribes are honestly usually in conflict with one another. They really don't get along very well. This lack of unification and conflict with one another in the Mountains of Morn area is what keeps the ogres from being a worldwide threat. If there was somehow an ogre who managed to unite all the Ogre Kingdoms, there wouldn't be a safe empire in the entire Warhammer universe. Despite being so powerful individually, ogres have a pretty large population too, and can repopulate fairly quickly under the right circumstances, making them an incredibly formidable enemy, and they would be a near unstoppable force if only there was a singular Ogre Tyrant that could unite them all. Wink, wink. Greasus, as all living things, well, maybe not every living thing, but most living things, has a father. And while not everyone stays in contact with their father, Greasus stayed in ultra contact with his father, which we'll get into more here in a little bit. But anyway, Greasus was born the son of Gofg. I hope I'm saying that right. It's a G-O-F-G. I don't know if anyone ever has actually said this before. But anyway, Gofg was actually an incredibly well-known ogre, maybe even the most well-known ogre in history, besides for Greasus himself. Gofg was the tyrant, which means leader of the most powerful ogre tribe, the Goldtooth Tribe. The Goldtooth Tribe boasted the most powerful warriors, equipped with the best weaponry and armor possible, which makes sense since the Goldtooth Tribe was also by far the wealthiest among all of the ogre tribes. Their name is literally Goldtooth. That gives off pretty rich kid vibes in, my opinion. The Iron Guts, which the Iron Guts are the most elite warriors of any tribe, with the best weapons and armor of the tribe warriors, But the iron guts of the Goldtooth tribe were even said to be required to remove one of or multiple of their teeth and replace them with gold ones, just to show off the wealth of the Goldtooth tribe, which is honestly kind of badass. Like, making your most elite warriors follow your namesake is pretty sick, I'm not gonna lie. I'm surprised those fat bastards didn't just eat the gold too, though. I wonder how many calories are in gold anyway. Alright, I looked it up and Google said gold doesn't have calories since it's not a food source. I guess that makes sense, but I don't know why I was expecting something more like outlandish and exciting. I think I might be an idiot. That search was kind of underwhelming. Anyway, let's finish up talking about the Goldtooth tribe. And let's end it by talking about how they're so rich. One of the few trade routes for Cathay to reach the old world is through the Mountains of Morn. And it's honestly, if not, the most consistent and reliable trade route. And that trade route went right through Goldtooth territory. And while the Goldtooths plundered every caravan they could and got insanely rich from it. What a happy, convenient little scenario for the Goldtooths. And it kind of shows that Goff wasn't necessarily an amazing leader, just an amazing victim of positive circumstances. Also, it says a lot about Cathay's trade routes if this was the safest and most reliable one to get to the old world. That is not a good sign for them. Anyway, we'll get into how we should have properly taken advantage of this situation here soon. Greasus' rise to power was as rapid as it was unexpected. Goff, his father, had many sons, since he was the ogre with the most status in all the Mountains of Morn. And Greasus wasn't the firstborn, and wasn't particularly special compared to any of his brothers. The only difference between Greasus and his brothers was his intelligence and his unrelenting urge to own everything he could see, and to do that, he would have to assume leadership of the legendary Goldtooth tribe, even if that meant going through his own father. And well, he did do that, brutally killing his own father and then making a literal stew out of his remains. Yes, he made a stew out of his own dad, which is pretty disgusting. And I mean, taboo for ogres at least a little bit. I think a lot of people thought it was nasty, even the ogres. I mean, ogres from around the Mountains of Morn heard about this, and they were like, so this guy's fucking insane. But they were also extremely intimidated and somewhat impressed. I mean, this new kid on the block just killed the most important ogre in all the mountains and fucking ate him. What's that mean for us? Like, is he going to eat us too? Like, what's going on here? Making a stew out of his father also made him de facto new leader of the Goldtooth tribe. I'm not sure what happened to his brothers, or if they tried to throw their hand into vying for leadership, but if they did, their hand probably ended up in the stew as well. Anyway, after becoming the leader of the Goldtooth tribe, he immediately began open negotiations with the kingdoms of Cathay. Instead of robbing and destroying any caravans that came through his territory, he instead had the Cathay caravans pay him for protection, which was massively beneficial to both Cathay and the Goldtooth tribe. Because of this deal, more caravans than ever traveled through the territory, which led to Goldtooth making tons of money from these payments, and allowed Cathay to more easily trade with the old world, and massively improved relations between Greasus and Cathay, making both much more comfortable with one another. Him and the son of Cathay's Dragon Emperor Zhao Ming actually had a breakthrough moment when Greasus made a joke about both of them having daddy issues. Zhao thought it was pretty funny, and since that, their relations have drastically improved even more. Let's be clear here though, they had very different daddy issues. Zhao had middle child syndrome type stuff going on, and Greasus has I ate my fucking father stuff going on. So beyond daddy issues, they have pretty much nothing in common. After making the legendary and unheard of trade deal with Cathay, the Goldtooth tribe, who was already the richest tribe of all the Ogre Kingdoms, was now monumentally richer, and their dominance among all of the tribes was clear and evident. However, just because they were the best, doesn't mean that Greasus just got to control everybody. He had to go around and make examples of the other tribes to show he was deserving of the title Overtyrant, which is the rare title reserved for ogres who unite and lead all of the ogres of the Mountains of Morn, or at least most of them. The first tribe he targeted was holding a huge feast that lasted days. They were holding this feast at the bottom of a valley. And while the ever-cunning Greasus began positioning boulders at the top of the valley from where they were feasting. Once he placed tons of boulders in the correct positions, he started roaring as loudly as he could, which started a massive avalanche and killed the entire village of ogres. There were literally no survivors, not a single one. As an inspiring Overtyrant, I personally wouldn't wipe out whole population centers of the people I want to rule. However, I guess he was thinking that this village would be the one he made an example of. While completely destroying a village did add to his legend, the surrounding tribes weren't convinced that he was capable of being an Overtyrant yet. Because of this, he decided to challenge a nearby tribe leader named Gut Badmouth to one-on-one combat. Gut Badmouth was larger and older than Greasus, and defeating him would truly prove the power of Greasus. Gut, confident in his ability to defeat his challenger, got himself in the position in the Maul Pit, where they hold their arena-like combat, awaiting for Greasus to arrive. And arrive Greasus did, somehow launching himself at Mach speeds into the Maul Pit, and directly impacting Badmouth's head with his massive body at crazy speeds, which killed him instantly by snapping his neck. Now, I'm not really sure how he managed to do this. Like, did he use a catapult, some sort of magic ability? I don't know. And honestly, I don't think anyone does. The point is, he killed the fuck out of Badmouth without really actually fighting him. Some of the ogres thought this was good enough and were impressed about his ability to launch himself at Mach 10 speeds directly into his opponent. Others, however, were not so impressed and thought he broke the traditional rules of fighting in the Maul Pit. So while the ogres were arguing whether winning that way actually counted, and if he was in charge of the tribe now, Greasus started just eating Badmouth, because why the fuck not? It just seems to be his classic move after winning every fight. After completely consuming Badmouth, who was larger than him, mind you, Greasus beckoned for more challengers, particularly those who were unconvinced with his victory over the rival tyrant. After defeating and consuming 3 more opponents, the rival tribe had enough, and the remaining ogres swore complete and utter loyalty to Greasus and the tribe Goldtooth. To be clear, I'm not sure if they just sat there and watched them eat their fallen comrades. How long does it take to eat someone? I mean, it probably takes a decent amount of time to eat someone bigger than you. And I'm not sure how ogres eat, but I feel like they were probably sitting there watching them eat for a while, which is kind of disgusting. Anyway, many tribes then followed in their footsteps after hearing about the legendary deeds of Greasus, from meeting his own father, to striking a prosperous deal with Cathay, to destroying an entire tribe, and finally to winning many duels in the Maul Pit, and swore allegiance to the Goldtooth clan. Nearly every ogre tribe near Greasus, swore their loyalty, and raised Greasus to the rank of Overtyrant. However, not quite every tribe was loyal to Greasus yet. Many were too far away to fall under the umbrella of his influence. He may have been the new Overtyrant, but he didn't have the control that he dreamed of just yet. To try and win over the last tribes that didn't fall under his rule, Greasus continued to commit great and legendary deeds. One of his legendary deeds involved slaying the ice dragon Jargrel. This was also the deed that earned him the title of Drake Crusher. On top of that, this was an especially great deed because an ice dragon named Ymir Drak had once frozen an entire ogre tribe and slowly eaten them one by one. So Greasus single-handedly slaying an entire ice dragon was absolutely legendary. There's no sources telling me if he ate the dragon or not afterwards, but knowing Greasus' history, he probably ate the entire fucking dragon. I can't imagine he doesn't eat every single thing he kills at this point. Another great deed he did was destroying the gate into a dwarven mine, which earned him the name Gatecrasher. It's not entirely clear why he did this or how he benefited from destroying this dwarven gate, but if you know anything, they make some damn strong doors. Doors make some good ass doors. So destroying one of their gates is pretty impressive. I think he probably just did it to flex. I mean, maybe they got some ore out of it, but I'm not even sure if the mine was populated. It may have just been an old mine. Who knows? We don't really have a lot of information on this story. Finally, one of his last great acts was consuming an entire herd of gruntelope all by himself. And now, not to get too off topic here, but I don't completely understand how ogres are able to eat so damn much. They have an incredibly quick metabolism. However, it doesn't seem like they should be, it should be humanely or ogrely possible for Greasus to constantly eat things that have more mass than he does. It just doesn't make sense. There's surely some magic shit going on here, but I'm not knowledgeable enough to explain it. Just know, if you're thinking right now, how the fuck does he eat so much? I'm thinking the same exact thing myself. As completing so many insane deeds, all the time while becoming ever richer from his trade deals, you'd think every single ogre tribe would have sworn complete and utter fealty to Greasus Goldtooth. However, that still wasn't the case. Some of the more distant tribes still refused to call Greasus their Overtyrant. Even so, Greasus didn't give up, and a certain event was going to help him accomplish his ultimate goal. Thousands of years ago, Black Orcs were enslaved by the Chaos Dwarves. And yes, specifically the Black Orcs were. I didn't make this lore, guys, so don't look at me. Anyway, the Black Orcs fought and freed themselves from their Chaos Dwarf masters, and, they probably just realized they were much taller and much stronger and never should have been enslaved anyways. After defeating the Chaos Dwarves, they needed somewhere to settle down. And while the only place that was really available was the Mountains of Morn. As you could probably guess, the ogres weren't too happy about this, and for literally thousands of years, the Black Orcs and separate ogre tribes have fought over land around and in the Mountains of Morn. The ogres were stronger than the Black Orcs individually, and they weren't outnumbered too bad. Well, they were pretty outnumbered, but not too bad. So you'd think the ogres would hunt down and chase the orcs from the Mountains of Morn. However, the Black Orcs worked together to hold their positions and never fought against a united ogre front. This is what held a stalemate for thousands of years between the Black Orcs and the ogres in the mountains. However, this stalemate was broken by a legendary Black Orc war boss named Ogre Ironskull, who united the Black Orcs into a massive army and began slaughtering ogre tribes, just absolutely destroying them with overwhelming force. He had so much success in battles that he eventually caused a full force WOG! Exclamation mark. In case you don't know, that means that orcs from the around the entire world all came to fight, and orcs had absolutely overwhelming numbers now, fighting in their attempts to take over Mount Morn. After hearing about the massive success of the Black Orcs, Greasus saw his chance to unite the tribes and lead an army against the Black Orcs and Ogre Ironskull. And this worked well. Many ogre tribes were fearful of the Black Orcs and realized that it was time to join Greasus or die. Greasus began his campaign and went around the Mountains of Morn amassing a massive and powerful army. Ogre heard about this and quickly decided to attack the Firemouth, a volcano that the ogres consider a living god and an offspring of their main deity, the Great Maw. Ogre defeated the famous firebelly ogres that lived at Firemouth and began taunting all the ogres around the Firemouth by hanging the corpses of firebellies around the volcano and disrespecting the Firemouth itself. Greasus arrived at the foot of the Firemouth and saw the corpses and taunts from Ogre, and many of his tyrants raged and raided their ogres to charge headfirst into the orc horde. However, Greasus knew better and was far more intelligent than the average orc and called a meeting among all of the Ogre Tribe tyrants. He informed them that Ogre was trying to get them to charge blindly and that he had certainly set a trap for them as they would charge up the slopes. And while Greasus was right, Ogre did have a trap set. He was going to send goblins down the slope towards the ogres to slow them down and tire them out, and then have orcs flank from both sides, and then finally and ultimately lead his Black Orc army down after the goblins and completely surround the ogres. To help stop this disaster from unfolding, Greasus sent war beasts, mostly consisting of Stonehorns, Thundertusks, and then Mournfang cavalry, ahead first to dispatch the goblins and engage the Black Orcs and Ogre. While they were fighting ahead, the ogres charged forward and began battling the greenskins on either side. They were outnumbered nearly 6-1. Even while being so incredibly outnumbered, the ogres were winning. Without the Black Orcs to back them up, the greenskins had almost no chance. Ogre saw this, and he and his Black Orcs finally cut a path through the cavalry and war beasts and engaged the primary ogre force. The fight was insane, and even though the ogres were completely outnumbered, they held. Ogre saw that to defeat the ogres, he had to cut down Greasus himself, so Ogre fought through the hordes to finally reach Greasus. Before Ogre reached him, however, Greasus smited his banner holder with his scepter, sending him meters in the air. By the way, pause. I know it's supposed to be smote, but smote sounds like dog shit, so I'm using smited. Smited sounds better than smote, guys, okay? So we're going with Greasus smited the banner holder. It should be Greasus smote the banner holder, but I'm not saying that dumb shit. Greasus smited the banner holder with his scepter, sending him meters in the air. This invigorated the ogres, and they began fighting even harder, seemingly gaining a second wind. Things were now getting bad for Ogre, and he knew he had to kill the Overtyrant to stand a chance. So he charged forward to meet Greasus in the middle of the battlefield. When Greasus saw Ogre, he threw away his scepter, and with surprising speed, he literally picked him up in both of his hands. Ogre, surprised by this, swung both of his axes deep into Greasus' chest, digging in deep. However, there was a problem. His axes were now stuck in the massive obese chest, man boobs, if you will, of the Overtyrant, and he was now helpless as Greasus began to squeeze. Greasus squeezed until Ogre was more than dead. He squeezed until Ogre had no liquid left inside his body. The sight of this, understandably, frightened the remaining greenskins, and they quickly began to flee and abandon their positions, which led the ogres to reclaiming the Firemouth. After a complete victory against Ogre and his Black Orcs, Greasus celebrated by throwing a week-long non-stop feast of all of the slain on the slopes of the Firemouth. It was apparently a pretty good time, and every ogre present ate a ridiculous amount of food. I mean enough food to last them the entire week, which is pretty fucking insane considering how much ogres eat. I'm also guessing they probably ate their fallen ogre brethren too, but hey, we aren't judging anyone here. During the feast, Greasus had a speech announcing that today it was the ogres and tomorrow it would be the world. After the feast, word spread of the greatness of Greasus and the Goldtooth Tribe, and now essentially every single ogre tribe in the Mountains of Morn swore complete fealty and loyalty to the greatest Overtyrant to ever live. Unfortunately, this only lasted for several years before the ogres once again started becoming more independent and cutting off their ties with the Goldtooth clan. Ogres were never meant to be under one banner and certainly wouldn't remain happy listening to someone who lived nowhere close to them. This betrayal angered Greasus, and he amassed an ogre force to once again run through the Mountains of Morn. However, instead of killing orcs this time, he would kill all the ogres who had betrayed him. Unfortunately for Greasus, before he was able to accomplish this task, the Firemouth erupted, and the ogres were forced to completely flee the Mountains of Morn and set up shop in a different land completely. While there, unfortunately, isn't a ton of information regarding Greasus in the end times, especially post-Firemouth eruption. We do know he was eventually slain by Grimgor Ironhide. Somehow, Grimgor killed him with his own scepter. I hope you guys enjoyed this video about Greasus. I started playing Total War Warhammer 3 a few weeks ago, and it got me really into the lore of Warhammer and just learning about different things about some of the characters within the game and the world as a whole. It's super interesting, and I really do enjoy it. It's just awesome. It's just a great world. They did an excellent job world building Warhammer. I decided to pick Greasus to do my first Warhammer video on because he's a pretty cool character with a really self-contained story. So to talk about him well and really know his story, you don't have to have like a super in-depth understanding of the entire world like you would for someone like Grimgor Ironhide, for example. So yeah, having him, having a really cool story, an awesome character design, and a self-contained story for the most part on top of that made him an easy and fun character to really start out my lore videos on Warhammer. Please let me know if you guys want more. A lot of this stuff is super interesting, and I'd be really excited to research it more if this video gets received well. Thank you all so much for the support. Huge shout out to my members, Jay and Sign Up King. Both of you guys are absolute legends for the support, helping me make lore videos like this, so thank you so much. Stay blessed, everyone. Thank you so much for the support. Let me know if you want more Warhammer. I really do appreciate all the support. My last video as well about the Corpus and Warframe. And if you guys want more Warhammer, let me know, because there's so much to talk about and it's really cool. But yeah, stay blessed, guys. Stay happy. See you in the next one. Thank you for the support, and goodbye.